Great. Hello and warm welcome to this Celsius talk on integrated energy systems. As it is written on the Commission's Repower EU webpage, the new geopolitical and energy market realities require that to drastically accelerate our clean energy transition and increase Europe's energy independence from unreliable suppliers and volatile fossil fuels. There's no longer any doubt that integrating our energy systems is key to improving efficiency and increasing our use of renewable energy sources. By facilitating the interactivity between energy carriers, infrastructure, and sectors, it allows us to optimize the synergy between production of energy and its use. We know the theory, but in practice, what does this mean? How do you get traditionally separate sectors not only to work together, but to become integrated? It is no surprise that such a complex question must be addressed with a systemic approach, with different levels from different perspectives. There are those who spend their every day addressing this challenge. We have less than an hour left to start scratching the surface, but hopefully we can plant a small seed in your minds, which will grow and carry the fruits that lead us to a carbon neutral economy. For fertile soil, we need to have the right policies that guide us and nudge us in the right directions through recommendations, incentives, and deterrence. Thus, Hengelo, policy officer at DG Energy in the European Commission, will address the strategy for system integration and delivering the European Green Deal. So having the right tools also helps us cultivate solutions more efficiently, besides making our lives a lot simpler. On such a tool, one nation scale integrated multi-energy system planning tool developed by the EU project PlaMES, which will be presented by Matteo Pozzi, partner and general manager at Optit. Then last but not least, so hang on, here comes the good stuff. The current environmental and geopolitical situation is green, but there's a green light in the end of the tunnel. We have already started to see the fruits of this labor. So successful examples of integrated energy systems providing energy to end users in a reliable and sustainable way. A prime example is the district heating network in Hengelo, which is recognized as one of the most innovative in the Netherlands. So Marion de Dooy, who is working for the asset management department at Natulik, will give us a taste of what this system is like. So without further ado, I'd like to give up the floor to the interesting speakers here. So Lelde, please, can you tell us a little bit more about the Commission's perspective and your work to promote and attain this Green Deal?
Yes, indeed. Good morning, everybody. I will put my slides on immediately. And indeed, my name is Lelde Kiele-Willumson. I am from the European Commission, DG Energy. I recently joined the Renewables unit, and I'm very happy to participate at this event to give you a bit of the, let's say, hands-on information on how what are the new developments in relation to the energy system integration. As you know, the energy system integration strategy was adopted back in 2020. So we've been 2 years since then. And I would like to give you a bit of the overview what has happened since then, with the focus obviously on heating and cooling, because I know for this focused webinar, this is a key topic. So just to remind you, let's say, key elements of the energy systems integration, which are also outlined in the strategy, is the more circular, energy efficient energy system with the deep electrification of consumption, focusing on both supply and end use, with the integration of renewable electricity. And the third element is more use of renewables and low carbon fuels, including hydrogen, in the sectors which are hard to decarbonize. Obviously, with consumers, infrastructure and digitalization tools really to helping the system to be more integrated and achieve the necessary goals. And voila, now I will give you a short update on the, let's say, the actions which were also announced in the strategy. And I will focus on my slides, given the time limit, of course, just on the key actions which really are relevant for this webinar. And in terms of the first pillar of under efficient and circular energy system, we see that the Commission guidance to member states on energy efficiency first principle, which was announced in the strategy, was adopted last year in September. And it is also key in terms of how we can make the integrated systems also more efficient. And it's also the energy efficiency first principle I allow you to mention is also embedded in the revised energy efficiency directive, which was adopted as part of the Fit for 55 package last July. And then the review of primary energy factor, which was also announced, is in the preparation, and it should be adopted by end of this year. And then the reuse of waste heat and from industry and data centers, which is a key element of how we link together different sectors, industry with heating systems, was also provided or included in the both revised Renewable Energy Directive and the recast Energy Efficiency Directive, also adopted last July. And then the second pillar, I will focus on electrification, deep electrification based on integration of renewables. So the revised Renewable Energy Directive really focused on increasing the share of renewables. And here I'm talking about a wide, let's say, integrated approach, tackling remaining barriers to ensure this high ambition, higher target of 40% for 2030 perspective for renewable energy, also focusing on different subsectors, buildings, industry, transport, in order to achieve this higher ambition. And then in terms of accelerating electrification, obviously, this is part of the strategy. Again, it was part of the revised Renewable Energy Directive. And here we are talking about specific provisions promoting electrification in heating and cooling, also e-mobility. And some aspects are also looked into the Industrial Emissions Directive. In terms of, more specifically, in terms of e-mobility, there are also other actions which were part of the adopted part of the Fit for 55, also all adopted last year, notably the new alternative fuels infrastructure regulation, revised CO2 emission standards for cars, and specific provisions also I need to mention here for e-mobility, taking into account renewables in revised Renewable Energy Directive. The last element or last pillar of the renewable energy, system integration strategy is the promotion of hydrogen and hydrogen-derived fuels. And this is obviously a very important aspect. And as you know, in parallel of the energy system integration, a separate strategy for hydrogen was also adopted in the same, let's say, on the same day back in 2020. And there is also specific sub-targets introduced for in the revised Renewables Energy Directive, both for industry and transport. And the hydrogen and hydrogen-derived fuels are also part of different other transport-related initiatives, notably smart mobility strategy, the extension of ETS, which also goes to is extended to road transport. Then obviously the AFIR, refuel and fuel for maritime and aviation sectors, and obviously it forms large part of a revised state aid framework, which also helps to promote notably a renewable-based hydrogen. And then in the preparation we are now developing the delegated act on additionality for hydrogen and renewable fuels of non-biological origin. And that should be adopted in June this year. So when it comes specifically to district heating and cooling, the revised Renewable Energy Directive have focused on both supply side and demand side. In terms of the supply side, we have increased the indicative target to 2.1 percentage point in district heating. Obviously, we also have put stronger focus on consumer information awareness, awareness in terms of how consumers can be engaged and also request more information about the renewables in district heating, and also stronger coordination with the energy networks. And here I mean coordination and access to, let's say, electricity networks, sometimes also to gas networks, to offer balancing and flexibility services. This is a very important aspect in terms of facilitating system integration. And also we need to bear in mind that the revised provisions in the Renewable Energy Directive also are putting focus not only on district heating, but in general on the heating and cooling, where there is an increased binding target for heating and cooling. If we talk about the buildings, which is the demand side aspect, if you will, for heating and cooling, and here we can also talk about district heating. We have introduced in the revised Renewable Energy Directive a sub-target, indicative sub-target for renewable energy of 49%. And this is very important in order to create this demand. And this becomes even more important in the context of repower, which I will focus shortly. And I will now finish here, and you can come up with questions, because I know I don't have much time anymore left. So in relation to the repower context, it's important to, in terms of heating and cooling, it's important to acknowledge the really necessary, let's say, acceleration, massive acceleration of renewables in order to shift away from Russia's fossil fuels. And this is clearly indicated in repower, as Emilie also mentioned. So there is a push for a high penetration of heat pumps, also solar energy. And for that, we have came up with the very important initiatives, which I will touch up on in my next slides. And also in terms of district heating, the district heating should play a key role when we talk about renovation of buildings, when we talk about renovation of, let's say, large scale multi-apartment buildings, where we look from the densely populated areas and cities in the neighborhood. From the neighborhood perspective, we can see how we can modernize district heating by using different fuels and linking it to the multi-apartment buildings and cities, so that we can also ensure different services, for instance, balancing and flexibility by using low temperature, which also allows to ensure energy savings. So here I'm also putting focus a bit of the hydrogen, which doubles the, in terms of the Repower EU, the focus is also on hydrogen to double the, let's say, outcome or EU production and the imports. So instead of 10 million tons, we are proposing 20, so doubling that, both coming from the EU production and imports. And I mentioned also, as part of the Repower plan, I mentioned that we have put forward very important initiatives, EU solar strategy, with the focus and objective to increase higher level of, or basically double the solar energy across different sectors. And notably, we are talking about buildings. which also, as part of this initiative, we are proposing a European solar rooftop initiative to promote this massive, let's say, decentralized PV deployment and make buildings ready for solar energy. And finally, we have proposed accelerating permitting processes, and here it's very important to reduce the permitting times for renewable energy projects, be it solar energy, be it wind energy, and also for the district heating, which also integrates renewable energy. And here I will stop, and I look forward to your questions in case you have any.
Thank you very much, Lelde. We actually do have a question. This is a great overview and putting us in context for this discussion. Oliver is wondering if you could clarify the requirement on district heating and cooling and the increase indicative to target to 2.1 percentage point. What was the target before this? And how is this target, why is this target now increased to 2.1? And because he saw projections that would require as much as 50% of heat from district heating and cooling across Europe by 2030.
So we are talking about the district heating target, right?
Exactly, I believe so.
Exactly. So the previous one, if I'm not mistaken, was 1.3%. And obviously that increased, but the district heating remains still indicative target. So this needs to be bared in mind. And the other question, sorry?
No, it was that because he recently saw projections that required up to 50% for of district heating across EU to be able to attain these targets.
So I think I have omitted one important element in my presentation, because indeed with the Repower EU, the Commission also has came forward with an increased EU level target, but this is 45% at EU level for 2030. So this is a very important aspect, and I apologize that I have missed it. And this is also part of the Repower EU plan. We have put forward a legislative proposal amending the Renewable Energy Directive, which also contains this target. And the same thing is also to be mentioned for energy efficiency. So it's not only for renewables, so it's also for energy efficiency. From 9%, it has been increased to 13%.
You covered a lot of points, so it's understandable that you can't cover everything, and this is why we have the questions.
Thanks.
More questions coming up, so I'll try to brush up, and I'll save some for the end for the discussion. Franz Peter here is wondering about battery storage in combination with solar and wind in order to power heat pumps in districts. But yes.
And I mean, obviously, I would like to know more specifically what is the question. What I can say, it's a quite general question and a very important topic. So storage obviously is very important. If you talk about energy system integration, we are looking also at storage. And when it comes obviously to district heating, how we can use solar energy when we have more sunshine. So when there is less sunshine, we can store. When there's more sunshine, we store that energy and use it when there's less sunshine. So this is obviously a very important aspect. We are looking into that, how to promote it at the, let's say, larger scale. We have quite many studies carried out, and we are thinking how to promote it more. Obviously, we don't have requirements that it should be required, but we are looking now how to, what could be the, let's say, best practices, how to do that. And obviously, if there are specific questions in relation to that, I'm happy to take them, and I have an expert dealing with that. So please, I hope I answered your question.
I think it was a pretty good answer, and this actually, I'd like to take this opportunity to bridge over to Matteo's presentation, who also works a lot with these types of systems and the more technical part Matteo, you have been involved in Celsius for, what is it, 10 years now? So it's really nice to see you again and have you come up. As I said earlier, every time we see you have a new project, a new solution. And as we said, these tools that help us attain and the solutions we want in a more efficient way. So can you tell us a little bit more about the PlaMES project and the tool you're developing there?
Absolutely. So let me share my screen. Can you confirm you see the presentation in presentation mode?
It is exactly as it should be.
Okay, good. So thank you very much. Yes, I will present you this new tool that is coming to light. But let me, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. For those who do not know me, my name is Matteo Pozzi, and I'm CEO of Optit, which is an Italian company that developed decision support systems that include tools to optimize the energy mix and energy production in complex energy systems, which of course interact with the electricity system itself, and today having a good capacity to manage the production mix with respect to electricity prices, with the capacity markets, with the trading system, is something that is attainable and is a mature technology that can be used, which by the way means that everyday production of heat and electricity can be modulated in order to meet demand from both sides. Actually, I will link this to the question that was raised before. Yes, I think that using storages to optimize the production, the coupling of demand and supply is very important, but let us not forget that if the ultimate use will be heating, storage of heating is much more cost effective than storage of energy, which actually opens some interesting integration opportunities that should not be forgotten. So maybe we will come back to that in the discussion. But so as I said, optimizing and integrating systems at a local level is something which I consider a relatively mature technology today. But we understand that the challenge that we are facing is much bigger, and it has to be tackled at the national level at least, and it has to do with electrification and electromobility coming into the place, and the electricity system actually being the long-range means of communicating between energy systems that sit at local level, where the district heating system actually interact with the overall system. And this is why more or less 3 years ago we actually managed to enter in and win a Horizon 2020 project called PlaMES, that stands for Planning of Multi-Energy System, where our expertise and perspective on district heating would couple with the knowledge and experience of the Fraunhofer Institute and the Technical University of Aachen, very expert on the electricity system, in order to create a model that could take into account the overall demand and supply of multi-energy commodities, to understand how to evolve the supply and transmission/distribution system at nation level. Actually, we also looked at the distribution level, which we are testing with a Turkish utility called OEDAS. So we were really looking at the big picture, targeting the requirements for planners, regulators, ministries, member states. And what came out of 3 years of work is something which is really a very, very comprehensive modeling approach. I won't be able to go in the details of it, of course, but just for you to know, the use case that we are trying to optimize here is Germany, in the case of what we call the central case, or a region in Turkey for what we call the decentral case. Let's think about that in terms of the transmission system and the distribution system, just to to clarify things. And as I said, the idea is to come up with cost-effective strategies to evolve the supply structure, meaning the production mix of the future system, taking into account the constraints and the needs to invest in the transmission or distribution system, which of course bears huge costs. Both sides bear huge costs, and the minimization curve that we are trying to achieve is the minimum cost at given decarbonization targets. So the idea is to decide what is the decarbonization target you want, and understand how much you need to spend in order to build that system that takes into account electricity as the main vector on the large scale, but also includes the demand and supply for heat, and the extra demand for electricity coming from electric mobility and future electrification, meaning that heat may be provided with heat pumps or other power-to-heat technologies, and the interchange and interrelation with the gas systems. As I said, I don't think there is time to go in the details of that, but just to give you a very high-level overview of the approach, there is a very big task in determining the instances, the configuration of the grids, the demands, the current supply structures, the potential for new renewable sources to be implemented in the system, and then the central energy system will actually define the cost-effective new scenario, which can then be tested with the transmission expansion planning tool at central level, meaning national level. And at this central level, there are ways of basically doing similar things of energy system operation planning, which is always a hourly dispatching exercise, a unit commitment problem that get tested on a network expansion planning at local distribution level system. So very, very high complexity, which we try to make it simple, at least in terms of navigating the scenarios, reading the results, launching, modifying new scenarios, and launching the models to assess a multiplicity of potential future scenarios that would bear their costs, their actual impacts on the future decarbonization targets. I mean, a very large number of KPIs that are seen as the planner refines its ideas regarding how best to build the future systems up to what can be obtainable within the budget constraints, within the decarbonization targets, etc., etc., etc. So there was a very big effort, and that was actually Optit's part to develop a tool that could be usable by the actual planner, and in fact, this results in a good offering for the design of the systems of the future, which allows to compare a large number of scenarios with a relatively small effort, understand what are the infrastructure requirements on distribution and transmission systems that take into account the capacity to do decongestion electricity, leverage on, for instance, district heating systems that may make use of waste heat, or accumulate heat, as I was saying before, accumulate heat in the heat coming from heat pumps, trying to play on the single hour dispatchment, which is done at national level. So just imagine that when we speak about Germany, there are more than 500 nodes and a very large number of connections which are being assessed at the same time. So this really is a very comprehensive suite, which is going to be presented in the InnoGrid session, which is going to take place later this month. There are two sessions. One in I invite you all, if you're interested, to actually follow this event. and we are now coming to the end of the project, which will finish in October. So please follow up us, because these kind of tools will definitely be able to play an important role in the decarbonization pathway that we are looking at. I went really fast, but I think the idea was really to be able to answer your question, go into a lively discussion with you, as I'm accustomed to doing these Celsius talks. So Emilia, I think I would hand it back to you, and I'm here for curiosity and more details regarding what the audience is interested about.
Thank you very much. It was a great overview. It's great to have that balance from we have the policy and now the technical, these digital tools making things happen. An anonymous attendee has heard that there are issues in Germany with regards to curtailment of the wind generation in certain parts of the country.
Yeah.
Does your tool look at this issue? And if so, what type of outcomes did you generate?
I cannot help thanking for the question, because the problem we're facing was actually originating from that issue, meaning a lot of especially wind power generation being produced in the north that sometimes exceeds the capacity of the northern part of the country to use that power. And similar things actually happen in Denmark, as you may know, and that is why Denmark invested a lot on seasonal heat storage to be able to decongestion the electricity system in a very truly integrated sector coupling approach. So the starting point of the PlaMES project was exactly that. We are now reinforcing the capacity to have green electricity in the north, but that has to be curtailed because of lack of transportation infrastructure. The problem being, if we just create transportation infrastructure, this will cost a huge amount of money, because, as you may all know, the large part of the heavy industry in Germany is located in the southern part of the country, I mean Bavaria and Stuttgart, Frankfurt, etc. So the point was exactly that. How best to avoid curtailment or minimize curtailment, take into account that a fine and complex balance need to be found in order to understand how best to make use of this extra capacity with minimum intervention or adequate intervention on the transportation system. And that was really the birth of the PlaMES project. So thank you very much, because I'm not able today to say whether the scenarios that we are working on have a definitive answer to that. I think there's nothing definitive in this matter. But
is there any way?
We are still in the validation phase. But by the end of the project, that is the big question to be answered, and the level of investment required to avoid or minimize that from happening is really one of the. It was the spark for this project to be written in the first place 4 years ago. So
great. And how did you? Danielle is wondering how you solved the trade-off between an impressively comprehensive model and the very high computational sources it must take. For example, has it been necessary to delimit or specify time, geographical simplifications, and such details?
Okay, that's another. I'm very glad and for this to be asked. Let me go back to this question. The problem of the amount of data that is being managed and how to actually be capable of handling that was the issue. When I presented the consortium, in fact, I failed to mention the University of Bologna, and the University of Bologna was really involved in order to understand what could be decoupling and resolution strategies that could achieve results in reasonable time frames. So the big difficulty of the project, of course, was in defining the structure of data and the resolution strategy to manage this huge complexity. Of course, there are some simplifications that need to be applied at some point, but I think we've reached a relatively good balance in terms of times for the resolution and management of the scenarios. Of course, no one should expect that even though the interface is very handy and looks like something that the way you click a button and you get your result. Yes, you get your result after a few hours. Behind that click of a button, there is a very, very intense big data analytics and big data management process, supercomputing assets, etc. But the good point is that after a few hours, you get your scenario and you can start analyzing it, assessing it, and eventually relaunch it again and again. So
better a few hours than a few days or months as it used to be. It still amazes me how far the technology has come.
Yeah, I think these are pretty amazing results. As I said, and I'm sure that the audience understand that there are some simplifications that are being taken when we look at this scale of problems, but we believe that this simplification is enough for accurate and significant questions to be answered, which is really the purpose of these tools.
Great, thank you for this. And there are more questions, as mentioned. We could spend days, I think a lifetime on these issues. But I would like to now move to the last but not least at all presentation by Marion. Give us a concrete example. How does an integrated system, smart system look like to provide sustainable, renewable, reliable energy to end users?
Yeah, so thank you, Emilia. Indeed, I will tell you something about our Hengelo networks, which is the most innovative district heating network in the Netherlands. So I am Marion de Gooy, and I work for Natuurlijk, which is a company in district heating in the Netherlands. And I mainly work at looking at our operational data and what we can do with it to optimize our networks. So what I will talk about today, first I will introduce our company. So what exactly is Natuurlijk? Then I will tell something about our company objectives and our outlook to the future. And then I will dive into our Hengelo network and explain a bit about what the developments there are into developing it into a 5th generation network. So first, what is Natuurlijk? Natuurlijk is, as I already mentioned, a district heating company in the Netherlands. And we supply heat and cold to approximately 85,000 residential and 1,200 commercial customers. We're only looking into district heating networks and district cooling networks. So we focus on local and sustainable sources. These are some of our projects or our networks in the Netherlands. As you can see, we're mostly present in the south and the east of the Netherlands. And we're present, I believe now, in 48 municipalities. As you can see, we have some networks, or most of our networks are already on industrial waste heat or biomass. But we also still have some networks that are still gas-fired. So we're also in a transition in this, transitioning more towards more sustainable sources. And we're more and more looking into developing sources such as geothermal or aquathermal energy. So then about our company objectives. Our outlook to the future is that we aim to have reduced CO2 by 70% in 2030, and we aim to be CO2 neutral in 2040. And we aim to have 200,000 end customers in 2030. Well, as you just saw our numbers of our current amount of customers, you can see that that's almost double. So we're quite ambitious towards the future, and to be able to realize this growth and this amount of CO2 reduction, we have to operate more efficiently. So therefore, our third goal is to reduce our costs by 30% in 2030. How we aim to do that? So we already have a CO2 reduction of about 50 to 55% nowadays. And to reach that 70% CO2 reduction in 2030, we on one hand have to be more efficient, which is this line. And on the other hand, we aim to reduce our forward and return temperatures. So by this, we will also reduce our heat losses and use our heat to a maximum. Then I will tell something more about, so as I mentioned in the introduction, the Hengelo network is the most innovative network of the Netherlands. The network uses heat cascading. So we use high temperature heat from the waste incineration. So the waste incineration is located at number 1. Then that high temperature heat is transported to number 2, which is a company in salt production, Nobion. And then that low temperature heat, which is left over, is used first by companies that can use low temperature heat. And then the heat that is left over is transferred to our energy stations at A and B, where we upgrade the low temperature heat to mid temperature, so about 70 degrees, with heat pumps. The heat pumps use the electricity from a solar park that is located at the waste incineration, so here. And with this system, we can use the heat to a maximum because it's used multiple times. Then there are several developments in the Hengelo network to optimize this system to even increase the efficiency more. So the first thing that we have done is we are developing a digital twin together with Gradient. A digital twin is a digital model of the network, which we can use to calculate the most optimal set points for district heating network. So one of the things we are doing is we are using dynamic forward temperatures to match the demand of the network in a given time. What we also do with this model is to calculate the most optimal functions for the heat pumps. So we're looking at how we can use them in the most optimal way. And we can also use this model to find any places in the network where there are still possibilities to optimize. So for example, we can identify bypasses, or we can identify customers with a customer side installation that doesn't function to its optimal, meaning that they might have high return temperatures, which of course lowers the COP of a heat pump. Furthermore, we are looking into buffer studies. So we are using this digital twin to calculate different scenarios for a buffer into the system, meaning that we are looking for an optimum between the size of the buffer and the most sustainable way to operate our district heating network. Furthermore, we are looking at demand-side response, meaning that we're not just looking at dynamic forward temperatures at the source side, but also looking at dynamic temperatures at the customer side, so that we can optimize the system throughout the whole network. We are looking into the feasibility of collective and individual both. So at some apartment buildings, we are looking into placing a heat pump at the apartment building so that it can also be used for cooling. And in combination with the buffer, these heat pumps might be able to also produce heat into the system that can be transported towards the buffer. At times, of course, only cooling is demanded. And last but not least, we are looking into power to heat and power to power combined concepts. So we're looking to place batteries, which can be used when the electricity network is full, so that we can store electricity. And in combination with that, we're looking at placing e-boilers. Right now, the highest peaks in the network are filled with gas. So on the coldest days in the year, we still use a bit of gas, which is only a few percentage of the year of the heat demand. But if we can combine that with these batteries and with these e-boilers, we might be able to even sustainalize these highest peaks in the year. So that's my presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much for your presentation. As our participants get to their keyboards, not only in the chat, I've seen there's been a lot of interactions there. It's great to see about the Q&A function. I was wondering, you say you want to double the amount of customers. Are you looking at existing buildings, new production, or a combination of the two?
A combination, yes.
Would it be mainly, it would 50-50 or how's Hengelo growing, I guess, is also the question.
Hengelo is growing quite a lot, actually. So we're now around 300 customers out of my head, and we aim to grow to about 1,500 in the upcoming years. So there are quite some projects there, yeah. And those are both newly built houses and existing houses.
It's really interesting to see how you really have combined the cold, the digitalization and everything. You really are looking at the system as a whole. We have about 10 minutes left. So I'd like to invite Matteo and Elde to turn on your cameras and join us in this discussion. To the rest of the participants, if you have questions for all three of our experts, please feel free to write them in the Q&A. But there is one question that came up when you were presenting from Daniel, if there's any indication of which regulatory barriers or permitting that they will be fast-tracked for district heating, and are there any indications to addressing finance, public or private, to develop these district heating incentives? So what are the barriers and what are the financial solutions you're looking at to put in place, is my interpretation of the question.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. Basically, in relation to the barriers, I think what we have now proposed in the revised Renewables Energy Directive is the aim to overcome the, let's say, remaining or existing barriers to allow linking together electricity sectors with district heating, and as I said, to address both supply and demand side through promoting, let's say, putting more focus on district heating via the increased target, even though it's indicative, but we hope that there is a scope to really focus on that, and the possibility to use the waste heat coming from industry, as very nicely also presented by Marion. Then we also, obviously, in terms of financing, there are different sources of financing under the EU financing programs. I'm sure everybody is aware of the cohesion funds in InvestEU, Horizon 2020 projects, LIFE projects, and also the potential use of ETS allowances to shift away from fossil fuels and use it for renewable-based district heating. So there are certainly a lot of financing possibilities. And lastly, and maybe not least, the recovery and resilience funds. Many member states have used this, let's say, avenue to modernize district heating systems. I cannot give you now specific examples. I need to look into those. And now the Repower EU, also under Repower EU, member states can come up with these district heating modernization projects. So the money should be there. The question is how we address, let's say, the slow level of initiative, or the complexity, as Matteo also mentioned, how we can simplify all these, let's say, approaches. This is the question. So because we have the regulatory framework, which needs obviously to be now transferred into the national regulatory frameworks, but then we need to do that in practice. And obviously we in the Commission will hope we will come up with dedicated guidance, and notably we look how we could help member states to promote use of waste heat. There, I understand member states would need more information how the waste heat can be accounted when we talk about the specific sub-targets. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah. It makes me think it must be a really interesting dance you have here between how to work at a European level, then trickle it down to the member states, how they each work in turn, and then how they themselves trickle it down to the cities, to the regions, where it's where the networks are being built. So there are many solutions, and it really makes me think of what I said in the beginning, how there are incentives and deterrents and sort of guiding to the right solution. So thank you very much for that. An anonymous attendee has a question for you, and he's wondering, or she's wondering, how important this digital twin is for the development you're making in Hengelo.
Well, I would say it's very important because it really helps us to make the most out of our current system. Meaning that we can use the energy of, for example, the heat pumps to an optimum and really produce the most heat with it. So it really helps us to increase our total cost of ownership of what is already there. And therefore it will also help us grow in the future, because we would need less extra sustainable sources, let's say, to both grow and keep our current network sustainable.
Great. And does your company use seasonal energy storage? If so, what type?
Well, we don't use it as much yet, but as I mentioned, we're doing a buffer study in Hengelo, and there we will look at seasonal storage. We are currently looking at hot water storage, but we're also looking more and more into other types of storages. So I know there's one project in our innovation department, which is looking into phase-changing materials. The TRL level of those types of storages is not that high yet. So we're not, we haven't been able to implement it yet, but we're definitely looking at it.
This phase-changing material, there is, I know, some financing from the Commission as well to continue developing. And this is, Matteo, I have a question for you. It feels to me, I see you stand in the middle, you work with the Commission, with the financing, implementing the vision through these projects, and you work with cities such as Hengelo. How do you see this evolution and this system integration in your experience of making that bridge between this is the goal, this is the vision, and this is what it looks like in real life, this is how it's being connected to the end users?
That really is the key for projects to come to life and to become effective. So I think there are many levels where decisions need to be taken and where analysis has to be born. The examples I showed from the PlaMES project is really for the regulator and the high vision to be built. And then it comes down to creating the conditions for real incentives for companies to invest in assets and manage their assets properly. While Lelde was speaking, I was thinking that very recently, I mean, she mentioned the ETS. These are being translated to some extent, and in Italy there was finally some legislation that introduced white certificates for energy efficiency. And that is now changing again the attitude and the costing and the structure of how local companies can run their plants, leveraging on the most carbon efficient sources in order to produce electricity and heat at the most convenient conditions. So I think it's really all connected. I know that this is a slogan in the district heating industry, but it really is true. I mean, the big decisions, the high-level decisions, become practical ways of managing the systems at local level, and linking to what Marion was telling before, having tools that allow to embed in the operation planning how best to leverage on the existing assets and manage them to optimality, which is an environmental optimality, but it's also an economic optimality. Means that today there are very many practical examples of district heating utilities doing amazing stuff with their heat, leveraging on a high level of integration with the electricity system. I mean, it was mentioned before, electric boilers, heat pumps, how best to use them, leveraging on heat buffers, which, by the way, a heat buffer costs more or less 100 times less than an electricity battery, which means that if you're able to transfer the decoupling of production engine and the use of heat to the heating sector, the costs become very interesting. So yes, it is very important to work at all levels. They need to be to some extent synchronized. But the good thing is that I would say mostly thanks to digitalization, together with all the technological advances that we are witnessing, I think it starts to look at a very modern industry, something which maybe just 10 years ago looked a bit like something, a heritage from the past, which I think is no longer the case for district heating.
Yeah, wonderful. Unfortunately, the time has run. To wrap up, I would like each of you to have, if you have one key message in under 30 seconds to give to the listeners today, what would it be? Lelde.
Yes, I listened to this very interesting discussion. Thank you very much for it. And I see that there's a keyword: digitalization, local level, and let's say combination of different fuels and technologies. So I think we really need to maybe discuss further how we can use all these tools, and notably digitalization, digital tools, how we can promote the modern district heating systems. Maybe there's a topic for the next discussion.
Sounds good. We'll take note of that. Marion.
Yes, so I think sector coupling is not easy, as well as making our district heating networks sustainable. I think digitalization can play a great role in that. And let's talk further about that. Definitely.
Wonderful. And Matteo, what do you have to say about this?
I mean, coming from a digital company, I can only underline what has been mentioned already by my colleagues. And thank you very much for not making me say that, because that would have seemed a commercial pitch. While I do believe that it's a big key. Let me just say this. I mean, a former European project that we were into was Upgrade DH. which was looking into how to upgrade the existing systems through a number of means, including digitalization. And out of 8 demo cases across Europe, from Denmark to Italy, from the Netherlands to Lithuania, we found out that the average break-even point for tools is very often within the year or 2 years. So it's very, very quick. This means that it is a low-hanging fruit, I would say, that companies and the municipalities need to look at when they approach this issue. But it is true. It is there to be used, and it brings very, very fast returns.
Wonderful. Thank you to all 3 of you for your presentations. And I would like to invite everybody to join us and continue this discussion at the Celsius and Reuse Heat Final Conference, which is going to be on September 7th in Brussels. I just put the link in the chat. So hopefully we can continue and have a live discussions, which I think we all miss, and expand on this. So thank you all for your attention. So for the cities that